Hello and welcome to Deep Dive from SmartBookWorms, where we dive deep into recently released books from authors you love to read. My name is Claire, your virtual book guru. In today's episode, we'll be diving deep into a deep dive for Revenge of the Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. Today, I'm accompanied by the knowledgeable virtual book guru, Megan. So let's dive deep into today's deep dive. Malcolm Gladwell's Revenge of the Tipping Point.
Tipping point dynamics in Gladwell's Revenge of the Tipping Point. In Revenge of the Tipping Point, Malcolm Gladwell revisits his earlier work, The Tipping Point, and examines how the dynamics of tipping points can result in negative consequences. Gladwell explores how the same principles that can lead to positive change, when manipulated or misunderstood, can fuel various epidemics, such as crime waves, health crises, and shifts in social attitudes. The book investigates three key elements that drive these epidemics: overstories, superspreaders, and group proportions. Overstories. Gladwell emphasizes the influence of overstories, which are the prevailing narratives, beliefs, and cultural assumptions that frame our understanding of the world. Overstories can significantly impact how epidemics unfold, acting as a kind of cultural context that shapes individual and collective behavior. Changing overstories. Just as overstories can contribute to negative outcomes, they can also be shifted to promote positive change. Gladwell provides several examples of how this can happen. The Holocaust miniseries. The 1978 miniseries, Holocaust, significantly changed the way society discussed and understood the Holocaust. By openly addressing the horrors of the event, the miniseries challenged the existing cultural taboo and facilitated a shift in the prevailing narrative. Evolution of gay representation on TV. Gladwell points to the sitcom, Will and Grace, as a catalyst for changing attitudes toward gay individuals. By portraying a gay man as a relatable and multidimensional lead character, the show helped to normalize homosexuality and challenge negative stereotypes. This shift in media representation contributed to broader societal acceptance of gay individuals and paved the way for the legalization of gay marriage. Superspreaders. Gladwell highlights the concept of superspreaders, individuals who play a disproportionately large role in the spread of epidemics. These individuals, due to specific behaviors, social connections, or physiological traits, can accelerate the transmission of ideas, behaviors, or diseases. Identifying superspreaders. Gladwell discusses how advancements in technology and data analysis might enable us to pinpoint superspreaders in various contexts. However, he also cautions against the ethical implications of using such knowledge, emphasizing the potential for discrimination and stigmatization. The HeyGen conference. The HeyGen conference, held at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, exemplifies the impact of superspreaders. A single infected individual attending the conference is believed to have caused over 300,000 subsequent infections. Gladwell discusses how understanding the role of superspreaders in viral outbreaks could inform public health strategies, but also acknowledges the ethical complexities involved. Group proportions. Gladwell explores the impact of group proportions on tipping point dynamics, arguing that the composition of a group can significantly influence its behavior. He introduces the concept of the magic third, suggesting that when a minority group reaches a certain critical mass, around one-third of the total population, its influence within the group significantly increases, potentially leading to a shift in the group's overall dynamics and culture. The Lawrence Tract. The Lawrence Tract, an integrated housing project in Palo Alto, serves as an example of how group proportions can be deliberately manipulated to achieve specific social outcomes. The community sought to maintain racial balance by controlling the ratio of white and black residents. This example illustrates the complexities of social engineering and the ethical dilemmas inherent in attempting to control tipping points. Corporate boards. Gladwell examines the impact of women on corporate boards. Research suggests that when women constitute at least one-third of a board's membership, they are more likely to feel comfortable expressing their opinions, leading to more diverse perspectives and potentially better decision-making. This example demonstrates the potential benefits of achieving a critical mass of minority representation within groups. By examining these three elements, overstories, superspreaders, and group proportions, Gladwell underscores the nuanced and often unpredictable nature of tipping point dynamics. While acknowledging the challenges and ethical considerations, Gladwell ultimately encourages readers to consider how a deeper understanding of these forces can be harnessed to create positive social change.
The perils of well-intentioned interventions. Gladwell's Revenge of the Tipping Point explores how attempts to engineer positive social change can inadvertently lead to negative, unintended consequences. The book provides several examples that illustrate this concept. Triplicate prescription programs and the opioid crisis. Origins of triplicate programs. In the 1930s, Paul E. Madden, a California drug enforcement official, championed the use of triplicate prescription pads to control opioid prescribing. This system, requiring copies for the patient, pharmacist, and state, aimed to increase oversight and deter inappropriate prescribing. Unforeseen consequences. While triplicate programs did reduce opioid prescribing, they ultimately contributed to the opioid crisis in a roundabout way. By creating an overstory that opioids were inherently dangerous and tightly regulated, triplicate states inadvertently made it more difficult for doctors to prescribe opioids for legitimate pain management. Shifting group proportions. When Purdue Pharma released OxyContin, a powerful new opioid, they focused their marketing efforts on non-triplicate states, where doctors were more receptive to prescribing opioids. This, coupled with McKinsey and Company's strategy of targeting super spreader, doctors who prescribed opioids at much higher rates than their peers, fueled the epidemic in those states. OxyContin reformulation. In 2010, Purdue reformulated OxyContin to make it more difficult to abuse. This well-intentioned intervention had the unintended consequence of driving opioid users to more dangerous alternatives like heroin and fentanyl, leading to a dramatic increase in overdose deaths. Had the original OxyContin remained available, the opioid crisis might have gradually subsided. The Florida panther and the dangers of monoculture. Near extinction. In the 1990s, the Florida panther population dwindled to near extinction due to inbreeding. Their lack of genetic diversity made them highly susceptible to disease and environmental changes. This created a vulnerable monoculture where a single threat could wipe out the entire population. Unintended consequence of conservation efforts. Early conservation efforts focused on protecting pure Florida panthers, inadvertently exacerbating the inbreeding problem. Intervention and positive outcome. To address this, biologists introduced Texas cougars into the Florida panther population. This increased genetic diversity and strengthened the species' resilience, demonstrating that interventions can sometimes have unexpected benefits. However, some conservationists opposed the introduction of Texas cougars, highlighting the complexity of managing ecological systems. Additional points. The importance of group proportions. The book repeatedly emphasizes how the composition of a group can impact outcomes, particularly when a minority group reaches a critical mass. The power of overstories. Overstories, the prevailing narratives that shape our understanding, can significantly influence behavior and the course of epidemics. These narratives can persist for decades, even when they are based on flawed assumptions. These examples demonstrate how well-intentioned interventions can have unexpected and often detrimental consequences. Understanding the dynamics of tipping points, including overstories, superspreaders, and group proportions, is crucial for navigating these complexities and minimizing unintended harms.
The impact of superspreaders, driving epidemics. The book discusses the significant impact of superspreaders, individuals who disproportionately contribute to the spread of an epidemic. This impact stems from various factors, including individual behavior, social connections, and even physiological traits. Bank robberies and the law of the few, amplifying criminal behavior. In the context of the Los Angeles bank robbery epidemic of the 1980s and 1990s, the book highlights the role of individuals like Casper and Sea Dog, who were responsible for over 175 bank robberies. These individuals, through their prolific criminal activity, essentially acted as trendsetters, inspiring copycat behavior and fueling the epidemic. This example underscores a concept previously discussed by Gladwell in The Tipping Point, the law of the few. This law suggests that a small number of individuals can have an outsized impact on the spread of ideas, behaviors, or in this case, criminal activity. COVID-19 and the role of aerosols, unintentional superspreading. The HeyGen conference held in Boston in early 2020 offers a stark example of the impact of superspreaders in a viral outbreak. A single infected executive attending the conference is believed to have infected over 300,000 people. Notably, other individuals who brought COVID-19 to Boston around the same time did not cause such widespread transmission. This case, along with evidence from aerosol research, highlights the crucial role of superspreaders in the pandemic. Physiological differences. The book explained that certain individuals might be predisposed to superspreading due to physiological characteristics. For instance, some people may exhale significantly more aerosol particles than others. Factors like the viscosity of saliva and hydration levels could potentially contribute to these differences. The opioid crisis and targeted marketing, exploiting superspreaders for profit. In the case of the opioid crisis, Purdue Pharma, the manufacturer of OxyContin, deliberately targeted superspreader doctors who were known to prescribe opioids at much higher rates than their peers. By focusing their marketing efforts on these individuals, Purdue effectively amplified the spread of opioid addiction. Identifying and targeting. Purdue, with the help of McKinsey & Company, developed strategies to identify and cultivate relationships with these high-prescribing doctors, offering incentives and downplaying the risks of addiction. This targeted approach enabled Purdue to exploit the behavior of a small group of doctors to fuel a nationwide epidemic. Ethical concerns and considerations. Stigmatization and discrimination. While the book highlights the impact of superspreaders, it also cautions against the potential ethical pitfalls of identifying and targeting these individuals. Focusing solely on superspreaders could lead to stigmatization and discrimination, particularly if the factors that contribute to superspreading are beyond an individual's control. Balancing public health with individual rights. The ability to identify superspreaders, especially in the context of infectious diseases, raises complex questions about balancing public health measures with individual liberties. For instance, mandatory testing or restrictions on movement for potential superspreaders could infringe on personal freedoms. Overall, the book emphasized that superspreaders play a crucial role in the trajectory of various epidemics. Understanding their impact can inform strategies for prevention and intervention. However, it is essential to approach this issue with sensitivity, considering the ethical implications and potential for unintended consequences.
The influence of overstories, shaping perceptions and behaviors. The book posits that overstories, the dominant narratives and cultural assumptions that shape our worldview, exert a powerful influence on how we perceive and respond to various phenomena, including epidemics. These overstories can persist for decades, subtly shaping individual and collective behaviors. The opioid epidemic and the legacy of Paul Madden. A tale of two overstories. The book presents a compelling case for how differing overstories about opioid use contributed to the uneven impact of the opioid crisis across the United States. The Madden overstory. In the 1930s, Paul E. Madden, a California drug enforcement official, promoted the use of triplicate prescription pads to control opioid prescribing. This system, which required doctors to make multiple copies of each prescription, aimed to deter inappropriate use. While intended to curb addiction, the triplicate system inadvertently fostered an overstory that opioids were inherently dangerous and tightly regulated. This narrative persisted in states that adopted triplicate programs, making doctors in those states more cautious about prescribing opioids, even for legitimate pain management. The Portnoy overstory. In contrast, a different overstory emerged in the 1980s, spearheaded by Dr. Russell Portnoy, a prominent pain specialist. Portnoy argued that opioids were underutilized for pain relief and that doctors should be completely empowered to prescribe them. This overstory, emphasizing the benefits of opioids for pain management, gained traction in states that did not have triplicate programs. Geographic variation. The divergent overstories about opioids, coupled with Purdue Pharma's targeted marketing of OxyContin in non-triplicate states, resulted in striking geographic variations in opioid prescribing and addiction rates. States with the Madden overstory, characterized by greater caution about opioids, experienced significantly lower rates of opioid prescribing and overdose deaths compared to states influenced by the Portnoy overstory. This disparity highlights how overstories can have tangible consequences for public health. Shifting narratives and the Holocaust. From silence to open dialogue, the book also examines how overstories can shift over time, citing the changing perceptions of the Holocaust as a prime example. In the decades immediately following World War II, there was a reluctance, even within the Jewish community, to speak openly about the atrocities committed by the Nazi regime. This silence created an overstory that the Holocaust was too horrific to discuss, contributing to a lack of awareness and understanding. The power of storytelling. The airing of the miniseries Holocaust in 1978 marked a turning point. This series, watched by millions of Americans, brought the horrors of the Holocaust into the public consciousness, prompting widespread dialogue and reflection. This cultural event effectively challenged and shifted the prevailing overstory, making it acceptable, even necessary, to talk about the Holocaust. Gay representation on television and evolving social norms. From stereotypes to normalization, the book discusses how the portrayal of gay characters on television has evolved over time, reflecting changing societal overstories about homosexuality. For years, gay characters were often relegated to stereotypical roles or used as comedic devices. This representation reinforced an overstory that homosexuality was something to be hidden or ridiculed. The impact of Will and Grace. The debut of the sitcom Will and Grace in 1998 marked a significant shift. The show featured a gay man as a lead character, portraying him as successful, relatable, and capable of forming meaningful relationships. This positive representation challenged the prevailing overstory, contributing to greater acceptance of homosexuality and paving the way for broader LGBTQ+ rights, including same-sex marriage. The Florida Panther and the Overstory of Purity. Conservation efforts and unintended consequences. The book recounts the near extinction of the Florida panther in the 1990s due to inbreeding. Early conservation efforts focused on preserving pure Florida panthers, inadvertently perpetuated the genetic bottleneck that threatened this species' survival. This approach stemmed from an overstory that prioritized genetic purity over the species' long-term viability. Challenging the overstory. The introduction of Texas cougars into the Florida panther population, a move initially opposed by some conservationists, ultimately proved successful in increasing genetic diversity and bolstering the panther's resilience. This intervention challenged the prevailing overstory about purity, demonstrating the importance of adapting conservation strategies based on scientific understanding. Key takeaways. Overstories as powerful frames. The examples presented in the book demonstrates that overstories act as powerful frames, shaping how we interpret information, make decisions, and respond to events. They can influence everything from medical practices and drug use to social attitudes and conservation efforts. The malleability of overstories. While overstories can be deeply ingrained, they are not immutable. As the examples of the Holocaust and LGBTQ+ representation illustrate, cultural events and storytelling can challenge and reshape prevailing narratives, leading to profound social change. The need for critical awareness. Recognizing the influence of overstories is crucial for critically evaluating information and making informed decisions. By understanding the dominant narratives that shape our thinking, we can challenge harmful assumptions, promote positive change, and mitigate unintended consequences.
The impact of group proportions, shifting dynamics, and tipping points. The book explores the idea that the composition of a group, particularly the proportion of different types of individuals within it, can significantly influence the group's dynamics and overall behavior. This concept, often referred to as the group proportions effect, highlights how shifts in the relative numbers of different groups can lead to dramatic changes, even tipping points, in the group's culture, decision-making processes, and overall outcomes. The Magic Third, a threshold for influence, skewed groups and tokenism, Rosabeth Moss. Cantor, a prominent sociologist, observed that in groups with skewed proportions, meaning a large majority of one type of person and a small minority of another, the minority individuals often experience tokenism. They become symbols of their category rather than individuals, facing heightened scrutiny and pressure to perform. The power of numbers. The book suggests that when a minority group reaches a certain threshold, often referred to as the Magic Third, their influence within the group increases significantly. This tipping point marks a shift from tokenism to a more balanced dynamic where the minority group's perspectives and contributions are more readily acknowledged and valued. Evidence from corporate boards. Studies on corporate boards have shown that when the number of women on a board reaches 3 or more out of 9 members, the board's dynamics change noticeably. Women are more likely to have their voices heard, contribute meaningfully to discussions, and influence decision-making. The Lawrence Tract, Engineering Proportions for Integration. A social experiment in housing. The book recounts the story of the Lawrence Tract, an integrated housing project in Palo Alto, California, established in the late 1940s. The founders of the Lawrence Tract, concerned about the growing segregation in other cities, intentionally designed their community to maintain a specific racial balance: 1/3 white, 1/3 black, and 1/3 Asian. Maintaining the balance. To ensure this balance, the Lawrence Tract implemented a unique set of rules. Residents could only sell their homes to buyers of the same race. This system, while controversial, aimed to prevent one racial group from becoming dominant and potentially driving out other residents. Trade-offs and challenges. While the Lawrence Tract successfully maintained its racial balance for many years, the book acknowledges the ethical complexities of such social engineering. The restrictions on home ownership raised concerns about fairness and individual choice. Santola's name game, disrupting consensus. Quantifying tipping points. Damon Santola, a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, conducted a series of online experiments using a name game to study how consensus forms and how it can be disrupted. In his experiments, participants were shown a photograph and asked to suggest a name for the person in the picture. Over several rounds, a consensus would emerge as participants converged on a single name. The role of dissidents. To understand how consensus could be challenged, Santola introduced dissidents, participants instructed to use a different name from the prevailing consensus. His findings consistently showed that when the proportion of dissidents reached 25%, the majority's consensus crumbled, and the group rapidly adopted the dissidents' alternative name. Implications for social change. Santola's experiments provide a quantitative framework for understanding tipping points in social dynamics. His findings suggest that a relatively small minority, strategically positioned and persistent in their advocacy, can overturn a dominant consensus. Group proportions in education. The achievement gap. Integration and test scores. The book cites research indicating that the proportion of minority students in a classroom can influence the academic achievement gap between white and black students. Studies have found that in classrooms where minority students make up less than 5% of the student population, a significant achievement gap persists. However, in classrooms where the proportion of minority students exceeds 25%, the achievement gap disappears. Potential explanations. While more research is needed to fully understand this phenomenon, the book suggests that factors like increased representation, a sense of belonging, and reduced stereotype threat might contribute to the narrowing of the achievement gap in more diverse classrooms. The importance of context. It is crucial to acknowledge that the impact of group proportions is not a universal constant, but rather a complex phenomenon influenced by various contextual factors. The specific context, the nature of the groups involved, and the prevailing social norms can all shape how group proportions affect dynamics and outcomes.
And there you have it. Revenge of the Tipping Point from Malcolm Gladwell, an update to his best-selling Tipping Point. Have you read it? If so, drop a comment below and let us know what you thought. And if you haven't, does this one sound like a must-read for you? If you enjoyed today's deep dive, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more book deep dives, and share this video with your fellow book lovers. Until next time on Deep Dive with Smart Bookworms, keep reading, keep growing, and we'll see you in the next one.